a quick disclaimer here on this episode. We are talking a little bit about suicide and self-harm. So if you are not up to listening to this episode, please feel free to skip it and listen to another lighthearted episode.
Yes. There's nothing intrinsically graphic, but it is the subject of conversation very candidly.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Thank you.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Queerosphere podcast.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Queerosphere podcast. We're really happy to have you here.
Yeah, today we are going to be talking about self-love of all kinds and shapes.
Ooh, self-love.
But first,
we have a question. Cry,
yeah.
Do you watch porn? Why or why not?
I don't know. I feel like I react as if it takes me off guard, even though that was my question that I came up with.
It really was.
Still slap in the face. Wow, I can't believe you'd ask such a thing of me.
It's so taboo. It's so forward.
No, just kidding. The answer is yes, and I do watch it ironically and unironically. I do watch it to make fun of it.
Right.
Like production porn.
Yes.
Is entertaining. I think that is hilarious.
Yeah.
Just the way that, and this isn't dogging on sex workers, just the way that they're produced, the instructions that they're given, the way that they're directed, they are so funny and out there. I mean, I've seen people try to fuck on a hoverboard.
Yeah. Yeah, really. Yeah, so that's
It's just the most ludicrous content sometimes, and that's what I'm talking about when I say that I watch it ironically. Like, if somebody tells me that, like, hey, have you seen that porn video where, like, somebody's doing this wild, crazy thing? Absolutely, I want to see that. What the fuck?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Oh, my God. Well, I feel very, like, my porn experience isn't just, like, the ironic part of it or even just watching it. I was one of those people who would, like, show my friends because they were, like, they were new to it or whatever, and I wasn't showing them in a creepy way, showing them in a, like, in a friend way. That we, you know, how you talk about it, it comes up and then you're like...
Yeah, like, here, why don't you try this? I really like this content.
Yeah, like
I'm recommending, yeah.
Yeah, I would literally throw down the best recommendations for eating, because it was...
People love to have porn recommendations. I mean, especially if you're, like... reserved people like we were as sexually reserved people like we were as children.
Yeah.
You want to be able to see it before you explore it sometimes. Yeah,
I think it creates a level of safety. I had this whole there's this one time in college where we were talking about porn in a class and the teacher asked, or the professor asked, was like, "Oh, like who has something to say about this? Do you guys want to discuss this a little bit?" And I was like, "Can I say something? I used to watch porn to learn." Like, yeah. Can we talk about this for a second, right?
Like, I literally, what I want to watch is, like, the first just little bit of a porn video to be like, okay, now I'm imagining this happening to myself, and I can take it from here. And I only really go to, like, homemade, actual, like, queer and non-binary people filming themselves masturbating. That's what I want to see so that I can project that onto myself. Right? That's what porn does for me. Yeah. That's what it is.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think that's like the most wholesome take, I guess, on it, right? It's just that you're not sitting there holistically always to enjoy yourself, but just to explore.
Yeah. Like, that's just how I use porn for myself, unironically. Because obviously, consuming it ironically, the majority of porn that I consume is done ironically. Yeah. Like, it's the most hilarious stuff that I want to look at. And then the other times, it's a tool for me if I need a tool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I've used porn in sex. I've used porn by myself. I've used porn a lot over time and feel like I have a relationship with it. I don't really care that, like, what other people think about my relationship with it. I think that it's personal to the person, because there are so many just, like...
Yeah.
I guess there's too many thoughts about it.
Sex is so personal.
Yeah.
And, like, porn is an extension of sex in a way.
Right.
Because that's what it's supposed to be. It's also, you know, sex work and porn is one of those industries that's about creating a fantasy for people. Yeah. And it's very unfortunate whose fantasy they're catering towards generally, but it also makes for some pretty hilarious things because I feel like sometimes they're off their rockers with that shit.
Yeah. No, my favorite thing to do is reminisce on the Scooby-Doo porn that I saw one time. And I have to say that I don't actively watch Scooby-Doo porn, and it's not like I was like actively searching for it. But God, the production, the storyline, the storyline of like the sex itself with the gang. Oh God, it's a good time.
Especially back in like the golden age of Tumblr.
Yeah.
Abby and I would see links to videos. Hentai, we would see people talking about hentai, and then we'd be like, we have to see what's going on there. Like somebody would say this most ridiculous thing that they saw, and then we'd be like, I have to see what that's about, like right now. And generally, it's pretty funny and hilarious. We have a lot of good memories of just laughing and enjoying ourselves.
Yeah. I have a lot of good memories with my friends too, especially in college where we were expressing our sexuality to each other and like doing things that were exploratory, like watching porn or giving each other recommendations or whatever. And I remember some of those being the best times because it was authentic and it was honest.
Yeah.
And we were exploring, and like as friends, we were supporting each other in the fact that we were coming out as queer.
Right.
So, it's a good experience.
Yeah, it's a good experience, and I feel like here's why I thought that this would be a good transitional question. Are you ready? Because like I've noticed that only people who really learn to like, at least in the experience of queer people, only people who are very comfortable and have learned to love themselves to an extent are comfortable talking about porn.
Yeah.
And viewing it openly.
I can see that, and I can see why.
Yeah.
There's a certain level of acceptance to self-love.
Yeah.
And I think when you accept certain things, like not being shameful about certain activities that you do, then...
Yeah. I feel like it's like I would not be having this conversation 5-10 years ago.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be openly having this conversation.
I wouldn't be having this conversation this calmly.
Yeah. I wouldn't be having this conversation openly or with anybody. I would have dodged it. I would have blocked it. I would have not wanted to talk about it.
Right.
I would have been like, nope, I have no experience. I would have lied. I would have lied my fucking ass off. You know? Because there's an amount of comfort and acceptance in yourself.
Right.
That comes from that. And that's... I mean, you can judge somebody's self-love by their willingness to talk about porn, I guess.
There's your gauge for it.
Maybe there's the sociological leap that I'm looking for. Don't take that serious. Don't take it to heart.
It's surveyable.
Yeah, no. Anyway, I just feel like maybe there's a small correlation there sometimes. At least I feel like there is in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's a good tool for like exploring, and then like when you're by yourself, there is a certain level of like headspace that you have to sort of be in that's different than when you're having sex too, because you're not doing it for anybody else. You're doing it for yourself. You're totally in it for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, that's not my experience, but...
Well, tell me your experience if you'd like to enlighten.
My experience is that when I have sex with somebody, I'm kind of just along for the ride. Like, because I don't have any frame of reference to know what's... I don't know. I'm definitely on the asexual spectrum.
Right.
And so I'm just kind of like, you do what you want to do, and if I don't like it, I'll tell you.
Yeah. I also have a partner.
That happens to me.
Yeah, I have a partner, and that's different. Like, me and my partner do partner sex. Like,
yeah.
I think that's just a different experience. I mean, half the time that I'm having sex with my partner, like, I'm doing it for her because the other half the time she's doing it for me, right? Like we're doing this partnership, sharing that love. But it even makes it like the point of like self-love and masturbation, like outside of that partnership, even much more exciting to explore because, you know, I have the opportunity to be like grabbing somebody and, you know, doing the nasty if I want to do it. But instead, like I can take the time for myself, and it makes just like this whole, it's almost like another open door for me, right? Because for me, like masturbation is something I do like to do by myself. Like half the time if I want to masturbate, I really don't want Haley there. And sometimes I think I get the same thing from her that, you know, sometimes she says what she says. She's like, I like it quick and dirty. And I'm like, yeah, sometimes, you know, like when we're having sex, it's not quick and dirty. And we want that time to just be alone, be by ourselves, have it quick and dirty, go to sleep, whatever it is, you know, whatever our routine of that pleasure is.
Yeah.
So
I gotcha. Yeah, that would be that would be the complete antithesis of my experience.
It's hysterical.
As somebody who, I mean, doesn't have a lot of sex in relative of life, and am just learning, am just now trying to have the capacity inside of my brain to develop skills surrounding sex. And that's sort of how I view it, as a skill that I can have that is something that could potentially be fun and stimulating for me.
That's cool.
And that's how I'm viewing it right now.
I think that's a good way to view it. I think there's no like right way to view it, right?
Yeah.
I think that like I love that for you as a friend, right? Because to know you personally, like rather than just like to say, oh, that's good for you because we're on a podcast, like to know you personally and to know that you are caring for yourself in this way, I think it makes me feel like, I don't know, like I've had a lot of friends who go through unsafe situations in the sexual world, and I have, and being an AFAB person, like I always feel like I have this sense of worry for not only myself but the people that I love and who they're having sex with, especially if they're not, well, I don't know, I've had some people who are in partnerships who are shitty too, but I just, you know what I mean, like I want people to be having that fun that they deserve. Yeah,
and people always do that to me in particular because they confuse my sexual inexperience with sexual, how do you say naive, but naivety?
Naivety. I think that's how you say it.
They confuse it for sexual naivety, and I don't think that I'm naive in regards to sex. I don't think I don't understand it and its implications.
Right.
I just don't have a lot of experience with it, and I think that that's something that people can't.
They can't unlatch it?
Yeah, they can't unlatch that about me. They think that I view sex maybe naively because I don't have it all the time or have a lot of it. But I kind of wanted to segue into sex first because, like you said, I had mentioned that you have a lot more of things to talk about than just masturbation.
Right.
And because I have such an asexual experience for myself, and I have really lived my life in an asexual way, where I haven't participated in a lot of sex. My relationship with myself and loving myself is completely separate from sex. It's completely taken away from it.
Yeah.
Because I learned myself outside of sex.
That's an incredible experience.
I became an adult outside of sex.
I think that's special. Like, I think that's, and the reason is because I don't think it's one of those like straight people things. Like, I think people who are, you know, like hetero cis, they're always like, oh my God, like love is the epitome of everything. Like, you know, I want to know myself because I want to know the love. And it's like.
Yeah. And I personally feel like I experience a multitude of love. I think that I experience love in so many great ways. Like I experience love for other people in ways I think that most people limit themselves.
Yeah.
Because they're like, no, this is the love that needs to matter the most to me. And it's often romantic love.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, what if you... And I don't do that. And so I have a lot stronger bonds, and love for everyone in my life means a lot more to me.
Yeah.
I feel like because I don't put so much pressure on myself to need to have that one true love.
Right. I think that was also one of my first points that I tried to make when I started Les Breakup podcast all that time back, was that I am tired of relationships and romantic love being the tippy top. We're putting a freaking golden crown on this shit because it's the most like holistic love that you can feel, and it's just not true.
I don't think that's true.
I mean, I literally like was fighting for years, like trying to like explain this to people, how I felt in a way that was tangible and also like catered to other people's breakup experiences. Like, I don't want to feel alone. Why is it that I do like feel this alone? And it's because my brain has been brainwashed to think that romantic love is the end all be all.
Especially being socialized as a woman.
Yeah.
You're taught that that's like I felt a really long time like so confused about it. Like at certain points in my life, like, why is that so much more important to everybody else, to everybody, than what is actually happening?
Right.
than this other type of thing. Like, why do people go on and be like, oh, this person, I want to build my future with this person, so they're less important than you are. Like, am I not a part of your future?
Yeah.
Like, you want me to sit here and support you and be your friend, but you don't value me as a part of your life.
Yeah.
And that's not it. I build my future around my friends.
Yeah.
Like, when I think about where I am in 10 years, I think about how my relationships are changing with the people and what we're doing and how we're realistically going to be involved. I think of my future with everybody in it.
Yeah. I think that's a special thing to realize as a queer person, and just to have that community. I think it's so heartwarming. I think it's radical love. It's that radical love that queer people know how to show the world a little bit better than everybody else.
Yeah. You don't have to. You don't have to put all, I know that the world wants you to think that you have to put all your love in one box, but
Really don't.
you have the capacity to love so deeply, and you have the capacity to love more than just romantically. You have the capacity to love your family in a better, more healthy way. You have the capacity to love your friends more deeply and in a more holistic way.
Right.
Everybody does, and it's really sad to me that society teaches you not to.
Yeah.
But also, society teaches you not to love yourself unless you have those relationships, and that's really what we want to get into today, because that's fucked up.
Yeah.
It teaches us from a very young age that if we are not willing to have that, and if we don't go in pursuit of that, then we're worth less.
Right. Yeah. Self-love isn't easy, but
No.
that is because the world builds a place around us that tears us down in every single way, or in one way or another. That sort of like it forces us to rise from the ashes ourselves, right? Like, yeah. I'm gonna knock you down with all the power I have, and then I'm gonna say, well, if you don't have enough self-love for yourself, that's your fault, honey.
Yeah. Because it's like, it starts from a very young age where they tell us that, for one, they create an image for us that this is what you need to be worthy.
Right.
And then they sell it to us.
Yep.
And if you can't fit into it for any reason, the one that they picked, then you look upon yourself negatively.
Right.
And in doing so, they've created a whole slew of societal issues that are now rearing their nasty head. I mean, eating disorders, severe depression, suicide
toxic
rates.
Masculinity. Like, there's so many things you could talk about in regards to how the world tears you down.
So many things. And then in order to love yourself, you have to unlearn those things. And that's what people don't understand, is that the process of learning to love yourself is unlearning to hate yourself.
Right.
Because that's what they teach us. They don't just teach us to be regular. They teach us that the baseline is to hate how we are now.
Right.
To become what they can sell us.
Right. Exactly.
And so it's a lot of work here, folks. You have to think critically and challenge yourself, because it's not just about liking yourself. You have to first stop hating yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I loved a lot of things before I loved myself. And that was, and that we've already covered some of it, which was the idea of like romantic love, but some things like going to school and getting good grades.
Yes.
Things like getting a good job and staying in a job unhappily just to make money. Like
things like you're being invited to your friends' parties. Things like, going to events, being seen.
Being popular, wearing the right things, doing the right things, being at the right places.
Participating in the right things, making sure that you're a part of like a sport, making sure that you're avoiding. There are so many things that you're navigating. I didn't start to learn to love myself until I realized that the only reason I hated myself was because other people told me to.
Yeah.
I didn't start to love myself until I realized that I was being told to hate myself.
Yeah, that's really real. That's really real. I feel that.
Yeah,
I feel that.
Until I realized that every single point about myself that I didn't like was a capitalist selling point.
Yep.
Once I dismantled the reality of capitalism as the be-all, end-all, my worth, I was like, my worth the worth that they say that I have has nothing to do with me and everything to do with their standards. And the world wasn't built for me. So.
Yeah. I even fell into the trap of like self-care being a part of that love, but like in a way that's like, oh, I have to buy the right things. I have to do it right.
Yes.
When I was in college, and I mean, I had all these
sold us mental health for a while.
They still do. They still do. But I think people are becoming more cognizant of that happening. But I feel like, you know, having the experience that I had with like college roommates and just like living with a bunch of people who were pretty and doing the things that they thought they were good, and I would like look at them as an example and be like, oh, that they're doing this thing to self-care, they're wearing face masks, they're washing their hair before bed, they're doing all these things, and I'm not functional enough. Why am I not doing these things? I hate myself. I hate myself. Right? And then it's like, oh, but if I'm doing these, then I should love myself. It's like, that's not real. That's not real.
Especially as somebody with, for myself, when you add mental health into that, as a person with ADHD, when, like, it's shown that this is how people like you take care of themselves.
Yeah.
People like you take care of themselves by having a routine. And when you're somebody whose brain is wired against routines, it makes you feel like shit. Like, why can't I take care of myself? Why can't I do it? You see me all the time have breakdowns about how I can't fucking keep my room clean.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
and I'm not going to sit here and be like, well, you have to take care of this thing because that means you're healthy. I don't think that that's a gauge for me for you, right?
No, that's exactly it. We had to learn that just because that's what they're selling us doesn't mean that it's true.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not taking care of myself any better just because I'm doing a 30-step Korean face routine.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
That's kind of what it feels like. Is like you're just like, I don't know, it seems like a rabbit hole of bullshit, and you know what's really cool about, I mean this facetiously, is capitalism will sell you the next best thing in order to get you back on the hate train.
Yep.
It's like at almost every stop it feels like there's something there. The one thing that really stops me and brings me back to reality a little bit, and this is just maybe a good piece of advice for anybody who wants it. My therapist once told me that if I'm feeling homesick, and this means just to me sick, meaning that like I don't feel good, I literally cannot do anything functionally. The basic things that I can do to love myself: take a nap, take a shower, take a walk, or eat something green. And she's like, pick from one of those four. Pick any of them, pick one of them, pick many of them, doesn't matter. But if you pick one of them, after having experienced at least 1 to 2 to 3 of them, you should start to feel more yourself. You shouldn't feel so stuck in a place that you were 20 minutes before your shower, right? That interrupting those thoughts is what really, I think, to me helps. Yeah. Because then I'm no longer stuck in the same place I was 20 minutes ago, spiraling out of control with some sort of PTSD fit. Like,
yeah. Listening to your therapist is a form of self-love, people.
It really is.
Like, using those, I mean, going to therapy is a form of self-love, but making sure that you're using the tools that they're giving you in your real life will phenomenally change it. Because it's, like, I don't want people to think that just because I'm aware of it and I can fight it and I don't feel necessarily like I don't love myself and like I'm not worthy doesn't mean that I won't follow that rabbit hole.
Right.
Like, it doesn't mean that it doesn't get to me some days. It doesn't mean that I don't feel worthless sometimes. Yeah. Or like I just recently had an amount of time where I could not regulate my anxiety because I wasn't sleeping very well. And it was extra hard to fight those thoughts.
Yep.
Like, just because I've unlearned them and I know objectively that it's not true, doesn't mean that they don't still have a grasp on my tiny little brain stems.
That's a separate issue, right? Than being like, oh, I just exhausted my brain. My anxiety is getting the best of me. Separate issues.
Yeah. But it also affects my self-worth because you get into that moment of like, why am I going through this again?
Yes.
And you get to
that's
that
the
point,
spiral.
Yeah. And you get to that point of how can I continue to fight this battle when I end up feeling like this at the end of it?
Right.
Every single time when I end up coming back here to the spiral.
Yeah.
But using the tools that my therapist gives me to fight the spiral.
Right, exactly.
What it is, the point that I'm trying to bring back around.
Which I think is what I meant by when I said those 4 things because
Yeah.
that
If you fight yourself,
it literally interrupts everything that I'm doing in that moment and sends me somewhere completely different.
if you love yourself, listen to your therapist.
Honestly. Well, do you have, I mean, maybe from your therapist or just something self-prescribed, but do you have like a self-love prescription for yourself? Like a go-to handful of tools or things that you do?
My therapist always tells me to do something nice for myself.
Right.
So I have a list of things that I don't do for myself often, but they are things that make me feel better.
Yeah.
And so I pick one of those things.
What's the last one that you picked?
Get sushi.
Fuck yeah. Fuck yeah, get sushi.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So
my first one is literally go get my favorite food or make my favorite food, which honestly, like for me, I mean, you know the way I cook so hearty. Like if it's a hearty home cooked like meal,
Yeah.
if I go to like IHOP, I'll be happy.
Yeah. But yeah. So just have something, like cater it to yourself. Have things that are like things that you know that you look forward to. Go do that damn thing if you're on that spiral. Even if you don't feel like it.
It's the hardest thing to push yourself to do that first step, but it's so much different once you do.
I want to ask you this.
Sure.
So on your journey of self-love and mental health and feeling better about yourself, because for me, self-love, the fact that I love myself right now, the fact that I am able to internalize for me the things that I love about being alive,
right.
And that to me is what self-love is.
Mm-hmm.
It's recognizing what you love about being alive.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I have a couple of things that changed, things that I do now because of that change everything. Do you have anything like? And I'll give you my example: transparency, telling people about it, being open about it with the people in my life has changed the game instrumentally. I haven't had an actual suicide attempt since that's happened.
Yeah.
Like that's the biggest change for me personally.
I see that in you, and I think for me, one of the things, and this is not 100%. I also feel like I do not love myself 100%. I'm nowhere near on, and there's no 100%, but I'm working on it every day.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I think I thought of off the top of my head when you asked the question was boundaries for me. And you know what's really funny is you're one of the people who really opened my eyes to it about a year and a half ago. It was in a podcast episode, and you said something about it, and I was thinking about. I literally thought for freaking weeks after you said something, I was like, I don't establish boundaries with literally anybody because I do not care how people walk all over me. Like, I'm so easygoing. I'm one of the most easygoing people that anybody will ever meet, regardless of how bitchy I may come across or look. I'm so easy to just roll with the punches. And
I am too, though. I mean, I'll be steamrolled over any day.
Well, it was because of you, right? That you said that because you were going through something similar. I don't even remember at the time, but...
yeah, I think it was something to do with my grandma.
Possibly.
I think it was my mom establishing a boundary with my grandma and how proud I was of her. I think
you know what? It might have been that. Yeah. And for me, it just kind of raised the hairs on the back of my neck about my own mother and how my mom taught me growing up that, you know, you don't have to let people, or that she taught me growing up that people are allowed to do whatever they want to you because of whatever they want. Like if they want money, if they want sex, if they want whatever they want from you, they should be able to get it.
You're an accommodation.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Exactly. And you know, some of it comes from the abuse from my mother, but the way that it changes for me is like, I have to practice constantly that skill of like creating a boundary with somebody because I don't know how to do it like other people know how to just say no or do that. I don't know how to say the right words. I don't know how to talk to somebody about it. Like it's so scary.
Yeah.
But
I just recently learned. I just recently learned in the past 2 years of going to therapy how to say no when I really don't want to do something.
I think I'm getting better at it. I still don't think I'm 100% whatsoever, but that's one of the things at least that changed for me is that I just like sat back, especially in the last year, and just went like, I'm fucking tired of this. Like, I'm tired of being tired of people.
Yeah.
When I don't have to be, like, I could allot myself way more time for myself because I fucking love myself.
Yeah. And for anybody out there who's having this struggle, I just want to put in a small anecdote here. For anybody out here who's having this trouble, I have very severe rejection anxiety. Like, there have been a couple of times where I have perceived rejection in this last year, and I just immediately panic.
Right.
And for some people, that's why they become people pleasers. That's why they do everything. They're afraid of the reaction. And I want you to tell somebody who has been on the other side of that reaction, it's fine. Like, yes, I panicked. Yes, it was an awful time for me, and I hated it. But that had nothing to do with the other person. That was because my brain is wired in a way in which rejection is traumatic for me. And it's a trigger for me. And I know at the end of the day that it's not that other person's fault.
Right.
And I can rationalize that and talk myself down and be like, no, it's okay. You don't need to make it into, like, initially it'll be that whole big thing and it'll hurt my feelings and I'll cry and I'll panic and it'll be awful, an awful experience for me. But that's something I need to work through. That's not on anybody else's responsibility. So if that's what you're afraid of, I can tell you as somebody who is your exact nightmare that I'll be fine. The other person on the other end of that will be fine. That's their own thing that they need to work through. That isn't your responsibility.
Whether or not they realize it as, you know, enlightened as cry might be about their, you know, self things that they have to go through. I agree. Yeah. It's not a you problem. It's a communicative thing.
Yeah.
It's a thing where I know that, you know, one of the things I have the hardest time with is when I establish a boundary or talk to somebody is the communication itself, right? Like, what exactly am I going to go say that's going to make the less impact on my emotional well-being? Because my disorder is an emotional one where I cannot regulate how fast or slow or hard or blah, blah, it goes, right? Like, so when, you know, I want to talk to somebody about something, like, I sometimes really have to have a script because then it makes me feel like I'm in my comfort zone enough to be like, okay, well, at least if I've anticipated enough of this, the rejection side isn't so scary to my emotional dysregulation, right? And so I think based on, like, these experiences, really it makes me think that, like, the communication is the thing where you just kind of got to do it. You got to get down to the doing it.
Yeah.
And know that, like, if you value that relationship, it'll work itself out. Like, if you really love that person and you really respect that person, the communication tool that you use, the communication style that you use, and the boundary that you set should be established and okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is, you know, this is all stuff that I learned and I put effort into learning, and I wanted to learn and understand about the world because I want to like being alive. And I want to be able to live in this world in a way that allows me to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And these tools allow me to do that. And people are generally accepting of them. And if they're not, then they're not worth my goddamn time.
Yeah. I mean, I think you just have a good point about the transparency. Once you tell somebody, hey, this is what I'm going through, this is the goddamn time I'm having, and then that's how it goes. And yeah, I like that too.
Yeah. My biggest thing is that I personally, I don't want people to just, like, because I'm an asshole and I still need to be held accountable for my actions. Just because I'm going through a hard time doesn't mean that you can't hold me accountable.
Right.
And I want to be held accountable. But I also want you to understand that, like, the reality is that sometimes I want to die very fiercely.
Yeah.
Is that
For
sometimes
real.
I'm on the edge of actually going through with, you know, a suicidal plan.
Yeah.
Like, it gets to that point. But what I also want people to know is that I have a desire to not do that.
Yeah.
Is that I think anyone who suffers mental health the way that I do, or suicidal ideation in a similar way to I do, we know that we don't want to die.
Right.
But the alternative is to continue trying, and to continue trying sometimes just seems like hell.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you have to, if you love yourself, you have to learn how to fight those battles effectively. You have to go out and get the tools to fight those battles.
Yeah, you don't have to buy anything for it usually.
Yeah.
I mean, I say usually only because you can make yourself feel better. Like my 4 tips, don't have to buy anything, maybe grapes. But like the other half of it though is like I like doing art and that makes me feel better, so I'll have to go buy it. But generally like just interrupt those thoughts somehow.
Yeah,
just do something else. Another thing I like to do is watch a movie with Haley. Like Haley's my really safe person, and like if I can just be silent with her and distract those feelings, like that's all I could ask of a partner, really.
Call your grandma and ask her to tell her about the good old days. I don't know. I mean,
grandmas, yes.
I don't know, but yeah,
there's tons of things.
This is all. I think that as queer people and as people who are mentally ill, I think that we have a very different definition of self-love.
Yeah. I think it comes from that radical love I was speaking of earlier.
Yeah.
I really do.
It comes from that radical love, and it also comes from the fact that being able to love in a multitude of different ways, but also queer people understand how intrinsically our existence is counter to what
was normalized.
What is normalized.
Yeah.
It's like I like to say about my gender. I don't exist between the cisgenders.
Yeah.
I exist in spite of them.
That's my favorite, yes, because that's how I feel as well.
I don't exist somewhere between them. I don't fluctuate between them. I exist in spite of their existence.
Yeah. And that fight can even be just harder because you're actively fighting something that you know about. I think that's like one of the things that in a mental health journey and a self-love journey, like, it's really hard to get past is the stuff that's external, the stuff that you can't control, when you can't fix it. You can't take a tool out of your toolbox and fix it like with like a wrench. It takes either time to accept or change, and then, just wait to see if your circumstance sort of allots for that, in spite of like fighting that resistance, like gives you some sort of peace of mind almost as a queer person.
I just
resiliency.
I'm kind of staggered by sometimes what self-love in the mainstream looks like, as opposed to how I feel about loving myself. You know what I mean?
I think I do.
Because when you look at like the mainstream, like the poster child of like self-love and all those things, they're always very optimistic and enthusiastic people, who once again have very organized lives.
Right.
That's what they sort of teach you for self-love, that self-love looks like. And I just want people to understand that didn't work for me. That might not work for everybody. That's one way for people to love themselves. I'm sure that Abby, as an example, loves skincare, loves to do those nice things for herself, loves to take the time to do that, and that is her putting effort into herself and her loving herself. And that doesn't work for me. I fucking hate to wash my face. I don't, you know what I mean? I'm not good at routines.
It's just, I think.
So it's so important to learn what it means to you, because it's going to be different.
Yeah, it's going to be different. And like you really almost have to create like a list for yourself of shit that you're like, what do I exactly love about?
Where did you start?
Where did I start?
Yeah, where did you start? Like when you think about when you started, when the shift was in the change, where did it start? What was the first thing that changed?
Okay, so it has to do directly with how I actually look in the mirror. Like if I look in the mirror, if I'm standing in front of the mirror, I can see somebody different. Like it's dysmorphia, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
But it has a lot to do with my weight. So my weight was tied directly to how I felt about myself my entire life, and to unlearn the toxicity of like fat phobia was one of the hardest things I ever had to do. But the minute I saw myself clearly in the mirror and saw myself for who I was and what I looked like and who like I saw who I was. I saw Louise staring back at me and I was like, holy fuck, this person is worth it. This person is beautiful. And this person doesn't need a goddamn thing around me or on me to make it better. Like, I am divine. I can do whatever the fuck I want. Mic drop. That's what it is.
That's what it is. Yeah. I think that I can remember the shift as it was happening around the time that I was 19, 20 years old, because I started taking pictures of myself.
Yes.
And I had never done that before.
Right.
I have almost no pictures of myself from high school, but I started taking selfies.
Yeah. It's almost my second step, but yeah.
And I started changing myself. I started changing my physical appearance. I started dyeing my hair's color. Because, like, I've always dyed my hair. We talked about this the other day. I've always dyed my hair, but it was always blonde, black, or red.
Right.
Throughout. Did you ever see me with another color?
No, I remember the red a lot. Like, it was blonde red.
I had red a lot. I've done every shade of red. I'll probably never do red again in my life.
Yeah.
I dyed my hair pink.
Nice.
And it was, I cut it all off, and I dyed my hair pink. I had an undercut, and I was like, I don't feel embarrassed about having pink hair. For me, a lot of it was embarrassment. A lot of what kept me from expressing myself and doing it was confidence. Was that I was very embarrassed. And it's not necessarily that I got confidence. I just could no longer, so many things had happened to me that I could just no longer think of. This was after Evergreen. This was after I had my first suicide attempt. I was so exhausted that I couldn't care about it.
Yeah.
And then I just did it, and I loved it.
Yeah.
And I started to realize that if I'm authentic with my inauthenticism, if I take my, like, stop trying to convince people that you're a natural redhead, dye your hair fucking pink. Everybody knows that it's not natural.
Yeah.
Like, why are you playing this game?
Yeah.
And I started taking, and after that leap, I started taking more selfies, more photos of myself.
That's incredible. I had a similar experience when I had my breast reduction. Like, after my boobs were chopped, I was like, oh my God, I can walk, I can run, I can swim, I can do whatever the fuck I want. Again, like, if I can do what I want, that's kind of the freedom I feel. And I had that same experience where I wasn't necessarily, like, I would take photos of myself and I would see my body and I would be like, that is who I wanted to see the whole time. That I finally have stopped seeing somebody that I just, like, absolutely loathe, and I see somebody who has opportunity and potential and whatever at that point. Right now I'm at a different point where I'm just, like, very nonchalantly loving myself, but myself.
Yeah, because like, first came physical appearance. Like, I stopped being embarrassed about how I looked.
Right.
I just stopped caring about how embarrassing I looked. Even if I thought that I looked weird or crazy, I was like, but that's awesome, though. Who else besides me could pull this off?
Right.
And then I acted like that, and then people started saying that to me.
Right. They're like, you're so confident.
That's a belief that people have about me now, is that I can pull off whatever I want.
Yeah. No, I actively, like, remember a lot of people, like, just in my past, just being like, wow, you have this, like, air about you, this light about you. And I'm like, I don't know, but, like, yeah.
Yeah. I just started taking it in.
Yeah.
But then the change came because a separate sort of worth that you feel has to do with being a queer person in the world, but then also being a functional adult in capitalism with mental health issues, knowing that you're never going to function. I'm never going to be a CEO, an executive professional, you know? I'm never going to be that. And so you have to let that bring you down and learn how to love yourself despite that. And for me, that journey was obviously realizing that capitalism is bullshit and doesn't mean anything. Like, the value assigned to me based on capitalism is completely irrelevant to the human experience. In fact, I think it's the antithesis of the human experience.
No, I agree.
It's the opposite of being human. And so and so I realized and started believing and internalized that everything that capitalism believes is not real. Yeah.
And, again, liberates.
Yeah.
Liberates
yourself. And then I was able to love myself more fully in what I consider to be a more realistic way.
Yeah.
Because I love myself in a way that's authentic to myself, which is just recognizing and meeting my own needs. Enthusiastically meeting my own needs.
Yeah.
I have a desire to meet my own needs.
Yeah. And that's something very special that I think I don't think a lot of people get to that point in their lives sometimes. I think people will live an entire lifetime not feeling the self-love or the worth that they deserve, that they have intrinsically.
Yeah. I hope that one day maybe more people will think like me. Maybe one day I'll get to teach people to think like me. Maybe one day I'll be out there having a TED Talk about how to think like me.
This is your TED Talk. Welcome to Cry's TED Talk. Love yourself, bitch.
Because I think that it's important, and it's one of these things I think that I'm right about it.
I think you are right about it. I'm on that train. I'm already a cult member. Don't worry.
This is one of the things that I think in this world that I'm right about.
Yeah. Well, do you have any words of summation or like any final thoughts on loving yourself?
Yeah, drink water.
Drink water, folks.
Listen to your therapist.
Yeah.
Do nice things for you. Mm-hmm. Don't let the bastards get you down.
Exactly. Don't let the bastards get you down is it. That's the tea, honey. All right. Thank you for joining us on this episode of self-discovery, self-exploration, and self-love. I hope that you do find the divinity that you deserve for yourself. And, take to heart some of the shit we said.
I hope that you learn to love yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whatever that means for you.
Yeah, really. Like, truly, like, I really feel like I wish that for my audience. Yes. So thanks for listening. You can find us on queerosphere.net. You can download episodes there. You can find them on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Email us at inquiriesqueerosphere@gmail.com to send us any discussion points, questions, or whatever. We will see you on our next episode. So thanks for listening.
Thank you. Bye.